I like I love like
Ladies and gentlemen, how y'all doing tonight? Oh, come on. This is day 7 of the festival. How's everybody doing tonight? We are celebrating your independent films of the 21st anniversary of HollyShorts. All right. So welcome to our next panel tonight. The one panel for this evening is Visual Futures, Emerging Directors on the Future of Work, as moderated by the wonderful and talented Sandra Burretti right here. So, excuse me, Manetti, Sandra Moretti. So what happens is they are going to talk, you guys are going to listen, but then of course we maybe get to a Q&A section. When we do get to the Q&A, by all means, do not shout out your question. Sandra will direct you to ask your question. We will have a mic that is walking around. Please wait until the mic gets to you. The reason why, because we do have people who are watching this on BitPix or be watching this a little bit later and want to make sure that they hear your question, because your question may be a similar question that they have at home. And we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to hear all the information. So by all means, please give respect to the panel, give respect to your fellow audience members here, and enjoy yourselves. I know you guys just came from the last block, so now is your chance to get some insight from our panelists. So again, this is our panel, Video Futures, Emerging Directors on the Future of Work, moderated by Sandra Minetti.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, both in the room and watching at home. You know, over the last few years, Indeed's Rising Voices has become one of the most respected programs in the industry for discovering and developing new filmmaking talent. And over the course of the next hour, we're going to meet this year's class, and one of the people most responsible for putting them on this pathway. It's my privilege to be your host. My name's Sandro Manetti. I'm a producer, presenter, and a juror at HollyShorts. And if everyone on the stage could please introduce themselves, giving their name and the project they worked on. You're on.
Is this on?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Is it on? All right. My name is Michael Lay. My film is Mushroom Dad.
I'm David Tejas. My film was Freya.
I'm Jasmine J. Johnson, and my film was Honey Bear.
Hey everybody, I'm Wani Win, and I worked on The Stand.
Julian Darrow, and my film was Long's Long Lost and Mini Mart.
Julia Weisberg Cortez, and my film is called Boy Fighter. I'm Constanza Castro from 201 Films, and we produce all of the movies that you just watched tonight.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with you, Costanza, because when you are looking to select these future greats that you can work with, harness and develop, what qualities are you looking for, both in people and professionals?
I think at first it starts with the script and what's on the page. I think that is definitely the thing that we were looking at the most. And then we were looking at samples, and I think the samples are really telling of, can this person actually execute the story that is written? And and then the third part would be to meet, interview, and make sure that they do have a clear, distinct voice and vision for the story that they're telling. I think when looking at projects, we're looking for originality, for things that shocked us by reading it, for things that made you feel, because ultimately that's what we're doing. We're telling emotion stories. And so, yeah, that's what we're looking for. And everybody that's sitting on the stage blew us away.
Well, let's start with origin stories, because before we get into the projects, I think it's good to understand the people. I'm going to ask each of you on the panel the same question. What was the film or the experience that put you on a path to being a filmmaker and made you decide, yes, I wanted to do this? And then how did you go from that idea to actually setting about making an attempt?
Starting with me?
Yes.
It's hard to pinpoint one film. I mean, I immigrated to the U.S. from China. I remember going to the movies with my dad all the time. He loves Tom Cruise, and when he had to pick a English name, he chose Tom, which I don't think was an accident. But I mean, we would go to the cinema all the times, and we would watch things like Top Gun and Mission Impossible, and we would watch The Godfather every Christmas. So I think bit by bit, that's how I learned English, American culture, and when it came time to like pick a job, you're like, I want to do that thing that I grew up doing. So
Nothing says Christmas like The Godfather, does it really?
it's because of that one scene that like is at Christmas where Vito gets shot, and then I'm like, that feels very, very Yuletide for some reason.
Have you ever hung off the back of an aeroplane or climbed a tower like your namesake Tom Cruise?
I have jumped out of an airplane, but I've never hung on to one, unfortunately.
There's plenty of time. What's your origin story?
I was bit by a radioactive spider. No, my dad is a documentary filmmaker, so I grew up around filmmaking, around the process, and I come from a family where you're encouraged to do art or be a musician or something like that, and so I kind of had to choose something in the arts or be an outcast. When I was younger, I wanted to be an animator. I was really into drawing and just weird stuff. Was heavily into graffiti growing up, but that didn't pay very well, and was the legal bills, my buddy knows, where, we had to do a lot of community service painting over graffiti, which was also not fun. So there was a bit of an evolution, along the way. I started making music videos in my 20s and then some commercials, and it's just kind of been a progression that I feel like I'm still kind of going through.
I didn't actually really grow up as a huge fan of movies and television. So what the heck am I doing here? I loved stories. I just loved reading. I loved books, and I very quickly realized that nobody reads. It's kind of a tragedy, and the way that people were like consuming stories was through film and television. So kind of at the last minute when I went to school, I decided I was going to be a film major, and then like did nothing when I was in school. I didn't write any screenplays. I didn't make any movies. I graduated, I got the degree, but was kind of a little bit lost as in like, what am I supposed to do with the degree? And I moved out to LA, got a job in talent management, and eventually discovered what development was. And so I was a development executive for a while, working with writers and directors, which felt at the time like a great combination of like my love of story, but also this new kind of path into filmmaking. And then the last 2 years ago, well, it started before that, but 2 years ago, I was like, I really want to make something. I couldn't ignore the itch. And so directed my first short during the strikes in 2023, and it did very well. In fact, it's still playing festivals. And I've had multiple opportunities, including this one, which was fantastic. And now I'm a director and a writer. And here we are.
When you were working with talent, what did you learn in terms of what to do and what not to do in terms of shaping your own career?
Ooh, that is a great, great question. I would say two things. One, collaboration is ginormous. I was working with a lot of writers and directors who were super, super new in their careers, as am I. And one of the things that I would see, and it really was like either or, it was either somebody came in and they're like, I'm Tarantino, I'm Scorsese, I have a singular vision, don't tell me nothing because you don't know nothing, I know it all. And that was a recipe for disaster. And usually ultimately a failure. Or you would have people who would come in who were just like super open and wide eyed, never really done much, and just like so open to asking people for help. And I think my biggest takeaway was it is completely and totally okay to be honest with what you know and what you don't know. And some of my favorite parts of this whole process has come in like literally sometimes I'll look at someone and be like, yo, what do you think? Like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. This is kind of what I want, but I need your help because most of the people I'm working with are way better at what they're doing than, production design, DP or whatever, way better at what they're doing than I am at what they're doing. So yeah, the collaboration is key.
Thank you.
So I started with documentary filmmaking at a very young age in high school, actually. And then I went to college and I was like, okay, that's it. I think I'm done.
You were jaded.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. I taught like maybe like six months actually after college for my old film program that I in high school. But then I was just like, okay, I want to work in nonprofit. I was really passionate about ending violence against women and girls. So I actually had a whole career for 10 years in my 20s working in nonprofit and philanthropy. But during that time, I was screenwriting on and off. I just had like a dream. I was like, I want to write, and even though I only wrote one in 10 years. But it wasn't until the pandemic hit and I turned 30, 31 that was like, my job is shutting down programs. And I was like, what do I really want to do? And I just like, I think I want to direct. Never been on set, never seen anybody direct, just like an intuition that I had. And so in like 3, 4 years ago, I directed my first docuseries, Taking Root, and I got to Tribeca, and then I moved to LA, went to AFI, and here I am. So
How did working in the philanthropy space shape the kind of stories you wanted to tell as a filmmaker?
Um, I think less about the stories, but I learned a lot about dynamics and how do you create a safe space for people, especially in philanthropy when you have power and you have funding. And similarly, but not similarly as a director, how do you create a space where people can feel like they can be authentic and also, give me their ideas, but I still have a vision of like what the story is. I would say what inspired me the most is being Vietnamese, Southeast Asian women, and have coming from parents who are refugees, immigrants. That really inspires the stories that I make today about that center Southeast Asian women and girls.
Um, I grew up as a skater kid, and I grew up in the Jackass era when that was a big thing. So a lot of like where I started was
From
just
Tom Cruise to Jackass, those are the
Yes.
influences today.
yeah. So a lot of like what I started off doing was like shooting skate videos, like shooting tomfoolery with my friends in high school, like demolishing public property, and so that was like the genesis of like making shooting films. And then I went to film school, and after that I spent about 10 years doing a lot of like sketch comedy and co-directing and co-creating as part of almost like I guess like a comedy troupe, and kind of um like group of collaborators. But I will say maybe like a kind of late stage origin story for myself as like a solo writer director was my dad passed away in 2018. He had brain cancer, and I watched my dad like literally take his last breaths, which is a very surreal and kind of destabilizing but experience. But I also realized it was really like funny, like the handling of death and just all these things as you like try to move through grief. So for the past 7 years, I think my filmmaking process has mostly been around trying to like study death and the absurdities and the like mundane comedy of people dying, people trying to grieve, and like trying to move through loss in this messy way. And I don't know, just experiencing that, it was really hard to like find words to describe to other people what that experience was like. So I think trying to make films is like the way to just show people like this is kind of what that experience feels like.
Yeah, it's interesting how all of you have found your creative voices by being shaped by your own sort of personal experiences. So, what's your origin story?
Um, well, I think I was very fortunate to be one of the first people in my family, specifically women, to be able to pursue a dream. And that's exciting and beautiful, but it's also a lot of pressure. And I also grew up in a complicated environment where I was very isolated and I didn't have a lot of friends. And I definitely was not the 11-year-old running around with his best friends with his VHS camcorder or whatever. I spent most of my childhood alone, and as a result, my best friends were my grandmother who didn't speak English, my brothers who were out making trouble, and I was kind of just watching it from the window. And it actually was, I mean, my film is Boy Fighter. It's obviously a film about grief, and it's pretty sad. But when my grandma died, I'm here because of my grandmother. There's no doubt about it. And she was a Mexican woman, didn't speak English, was a field worker whole life. The resilience of this woman, what she gave me, this voice that she knew wasn't for her but was for me.
And I remember when she died, I was like 12. And even at 12, she had influenced my life in such a profound way. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, no one is going to know her. I am the only one who knows my grandmother. And that really, I remember that like traumatized me. And I remember telling myself, like, I eventually was able to move away. And as a result, even though it stripped me from my family, it was probably the best thing that could have been done for me. And as a result, I was able to really cultivate and pursue my voice and what I wanted to do. And I knew that when I stepped out into the world, I wanted the world to know people like my grandmother, or to know people like my brother who passed as well, and what Boy Fighters is inspired for and about for my brother who passed in 2023. I want the world to know these people. And I knew that yeah, that is really what drives me. And even now, as I also work in television, and I'm developing shows, and even as I get into these more complex worlds or narratives, I always find they're rooted in the voices of the people in my family who did not have the opportunity that I have to be here today. So that's really what shapes me. And again, it was a rough road. Like, I was first woman be able to go to college and pursue a creative education. Um, and again, it's an honor to be able to do it, but I just want to make them proud. So yeah, that's that.
How do you feel about the fact that only 7 of the top 100 films at the box office were directed by women last year, and how do we change those numbers to change the game?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I'm probably the wrong person to ask that. I'll be real with you, because I mean, look, regardless of gender, there's so much talent in this world, and um, it's a shame, and it's a loss that certain people are excluded and not being given the same resources or spotlight. A woman can make just as good of an action film as any man, that's for sure. And I don't know the answer of how to open it up more. I mean, obviously, initiatives that want to amplify underrepresented voices, but I think it's all of us making, anyone here who's a filmmaker, an executive, a journalist, whoever, it's be passionate about the POVs of women or other underrepresented voices, and have it be your duty to go out and research and find those voices and lift them up as much as you can.
Costanza, you and your colleagues have really provided resources and spotlight. So tell us your backstory that led you to this place in your career.
Ooh, my sister and I are from Mexico City. We moved to the United States when we were children, and our immigrant experience has shaped us. But similarly to Michael, we used to watch movies. That was the thing that we loved the most with our dad, and he would show us like obscure films from like the 60s when we were like 11, and we were fascinated by cinema, and by the ability to be moved by these moving images that translated beyond the language that we were watching, because he would have to translate them because we didn't know how to read English subtitles. Um, and but storytelling has always been something that, even in our culture, we sit around the table and we tell stories, we tell anecdotes. It's just part of the thing that we do in everyday life. And so immediately, I think I wanted to act. That was like the thing that I really wanted to do. But I was in college at a time when there were really truly no opportunities for like a Mexican girl with an accent that messed up like improv class, because I didn't know what a word meant, and it's like, here she comes again, ruining the fun for everybody. And so that really kind of like took me in a path where I'm like, okay, maybe like acting's not for me. Maybe I'm gonna go. Storytelling is the thing that I want to do the most. And so I started producing. So I'm like, if I can't be in front of the camera, but I can be behind and I can help other people push their stories forward. And I think that that has been like our kind of superpower that was hidden in this sort of like growing up in a world where like being a woman, being an immigrant, being a Mexican, like we didn't have a voice, but we did have the propelling to be able to push other people's stories. And that led us to producing. And it wasn't until maybe like 5 years ago that we discovered that we do have stuff to say, that we do have a voice, that it does fucking matter. And we're just really am really inspired to be able to work with incredible collaborators who and telling their stories and helping them push their stories forward. I think that that's really important. I think it's important for Hollywood to, like, the people in Hollywood need to come together and really foster emerging talent, because that is the next wave of the industry and the ecosystem of this world Hollywood movie making that we love the most. And so I feel very privileged to be in this position to do this.
Now, all of you filmmakers had the courage to push your stories forward, and look where you've ended up, at one of the most iconic movie theatres in the world, screening today. I hope you're all as proud of yourselves as we are of you. Can you tell us more about the individual projects that we saw today? I'll ask each of you the same question. Why this particular story? How does it match your own particular worldview? And what did you take away from it? And maybe what do you hope audiences take away from it? However you want to answer. Same question for all of you. Let's go in order again.
Always first one through the wall.
Yeah.
Um,
And remind us of your film as well.
yeah, I did Mushroom Dad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not inspired by a true story.
I'm shocked, aren't you? I really, yeah.
I think remind me of the question a little bit again.
Attention. How did it reflect your worldview, and what did you get from it, and what do you hope audiences take away from it?
Right. Okay. Great question. So I think personally, for a large part of my early career, I wanted to be a certain kind of filmmaker, and I think I was very allergic to topics that either felt personal or, in this case, comedic and whatnot. So in this particular instance, there was just an idea, which was, what would it be like if you had to take care of your father on psychedelic mushrooms? And from that, the seed was planted and was watered. But at the end of the day, I think what that really stemmed from was this memory of watching my father cry for the first time. And I remembered how profound that was, because growing up in an Asian American household, having a very classically Chinese immigrant father who wanted to instill ideologies of strength. If there's anything I can give my sons as a gift into the rest of their lives, it's how to be strong and how to endure and persevere and survive. But out of all those lessons, the most important thing that I felt was watching him shed tears for the first time. And I wanted to capture that moment on film. So despite like all the trappings of the comedy, what it really was like getting to that instance on the sidewalk and sharing that moment of connection between a father and a son. And I think that feeling of connection, especially through generations, is particularly important. I think so much of my work resonates about family and what we mean to one another, and how family shapes us and kind of determines the people we are or we aren't. So I think despite like all the window dressing and icing of the comedy and psychedelics and whatnot, it's really a story about finding connection with someone that you may not have felt connected with throughout your entire life.
And how interesting that a personal story about your dad losing control led to a story about losing control in a different kind of way. And what have you taken from that sort of personally? And what particular things would you hope that audiences take away from your film?
I mean, for me, I think all these films that we get to make are super cathartic. We brought up a point of like whether you can find personal connection in your work. And I think it's hard to be an artist if you don't find personal connection in your work. I think if you're not creating from a personal place, no matter what the subject matter or topic is, it really is going to have a hard time connecting with the audience. So for me, it was an opportunity to create something that was a tribute to my father and the sacrifices that he made for my family and I. It's funny, he saw the films and his favorite was Frere.
What a typical dad reaction. I think we can all relate to that.
Brand. But with that being said, I do hope, for folks watching the film, it's something that makes them want to pick up their phone and call their father and or parent or someone that they care about and just like find those moments. I don't think you have to take mushrooms to be able to connect to the people that are important in your life. But yes, follow that.
That was a lot, man. I don't know. I was just gonna tell the story about his dad telling me my film was the favorite. his dad actually did come up to me at the after party at Tribeca and was like, "Yeah, I didn't really get the Mushroom Dad movie, but I really liked your film." It means a lot, Dad.
And I was standing right there.
Um, yeah. My film. What does it mean? I don't know. It's weird. No, in 2018, I read a book called "There There," written by a guy named Tommy Orange, who's a Cheyenne and Arapaho author. It was like his big breakout novel, and I read the book, and I was like, "Wow, this book feels like it's about me." And it was about Native kids growing up in Oakland, California, which is where I grew up. And I was like, "Oh man, if they ever make this into a television series or a movie, I would love to work on it." And it was in development at HBO at the time, and it got canned. And I was like, I guess I'm not working on it. And then a couple of years ago, I got a call from a friend, and they said, "Hey, I just got hit up by Paramount. Do you want to adapt There There with me?" And I was like, "Oh, I'd love to." And then we started to, and then it didn't work out. And then another studio picked it up, and we did it again, and then it didn't work out. And it was this up and down. But over the course of development on this project, I got to become friends with the author Tommy Orange. And we both grew up in Oakland. We went to different high schools, but we had a lot in common, and we became friends. He actually called me in the middle of the screen just now, coincidentally. And so after There didn't happen, uh, I said, "Hey, Tommy, let's like just make something weird. And can you send me some stories?" And he sent me like a dozen short stories that he had written, and I read Frere, and I was like, "This is super weird. Like, let's make a film. Who's gonna pay for it? I have no idea." And
We can all relate to that as well.
yeah, right. It's the age-old question: who's gonna pay for my film? And then I sent it to some mentors of mine who were filmmakers who were much older, from the guys that are making movies in the '90s and stuff like that, movies that I love. And they were like, "This isn't a short film. This is just weird. I don't get it." And I was like, "Well, screw you guys. I'm gonna make it anyways." And and so someone sent me the Hilmengrad thing, and I was like, I mean, it's like 3 questions to apply. I think I'll just go for it. And they wanted to make it, and I couldn't believe it. So we made the film. And I was like, "Cool. I get to have a puppet hand. Let's go." Um, and that's kind of it. But it was interesting when we were interviewing for this program. I think Dome asked me like, "What is this movie about?" And I was just about a feeling. It's not a plot-driven story, and I don't believe that movies have to be plot-driven necessarily. I think that as long as you can leave people with a feeling, it's kind of all they remember, anyways. So it was kind of experimental, and I had a great time making it, and super grateful to this one over here for believing in it, because I don't think anyone else was going to ever make it.
But you believed in it. It was so interesting when you said, "Oh, no, well, I like it. I'll push ahead." And you
Absolutely. I mean, when I read the short story, which is a little bit different than the film, it left me with a feeling. And I was like, that was super weird, but also kind of beautiful. And some of my favorite films, they end in a way that just leaves you with a feeling. Sometimes it's like a really bad feeling, like Requiem for a Dream, but a feeling nonetheless. So hopefully people got it. I don't know if everyone's going to get it, but something.
it's time to explore your feelings now. Take it away.
Okay. So my film was Honey Bear, and I do not have any mascot experience. I have zero experience being a mascot. But I had known about the Rising Voices program for a while, I think since the first season, and like top of 2024, I was like, I want to do that. I'm going to do that next year. I'm going to do that program. And then I had been thinking about it like all year. And then the applications opened up, and I had no ideas, none. I had negative ideas. And I could not, for that, because there's a prompt. I don't know how much you guys know about. I mean, you should at this point know like what the kind of general theme of the stories were, but it's like the future of work is you have to apply with a story that answers that question, like what's your take on the future of work? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like I got nothing. And my sister, so random, my sister, week left to apply, sent me the Instagram of Ellie the elephant. I don't know if any of you guys know Ellie. If you don't, look her up. She is dope. She is cool. She's like way cooler than me, way cooler than all of you. And and I was initially like, what am I gonna do with this? Because like Michael said, I had no personal connection, and I need to feel deeply connected to what it is that I'm writing about. So I was like, this is kind of dumb, but cool. Like, she's dope. I'm gonna follow her. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what is bizarre? The fact that Ellie the elephant had like almost 200,000 followers on Instagram and gets like millions of views on TikTok and had been on the Colbert Report, RIP, and like was just like really popular in a way that must be mind boggling if you were the actual performer, because you have such popularity in this costume, but nobody knows who you are in real life. And it happened to be coinciding, as I mentioned to you guys, I was an executive. I was laid off, like a lot of people, like a lot of my peers and my friends. It's a very tough time in Hollywood. And I also was like going through like this crisis of identity where I was like, well, who, the first question people ask you is like, what's your name and what do you do? And I'm like, I do nothing. I sit on my couch right now. I have a job. And so when I put those two things together, that's when I was like, oh no, this is the story I'm supposed to tell. And I mean, I wrote it immediately, did a couple of drafts, and I was like, it's kind of odd. I don't know if anyone's going to connect with this. And I'm so thankful that they did, but it kind of morphed and it formed into not just, you know, disappearing into your work. I like the idea of the mascot being a literal metaphor for like disappearing into your work, but also realizing that your job doesn't make you who you are. And in fact, like if you did well at your job, which I have worked at jobs where I did do well, and I was constantly told or was made to feel like I was lucky that I had the job. In fact, I was told one time, like, you think you can go do this yourself? Go out. Like, fine, try. You're probably not going to be successful, and you internalize that. And so, yeah, Honey Bear, it became about, you know, somebody realizing that it's not about the job, it's about you, and you can find happiness with or without it. So, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it, how everyone up here had the confidence to back themselves when other told
Confidence.
them no, yeah, or found it from somewhere. How has it changed the way you regard mascots when you watch sports live and on TV?
I mean, I did a deep dive into mascots, and fortunately or unfortunately, so did quite a few folks. Like David, our lead actor, watched the whole doc on them, and he's fantastic. David is the actor, and David is the character. So David played David, and David's fantastic in the short. I don't know if it was because you watched the doc or because you're good, or maybe both. But I have a lot of respect for these performers. I mean, there's a lot of athleticism that comes with it, but I'm sure like it takes a lot mentally to kind of wrap your brain around the fact that you're walking around on the street and no one is going to really kind of celebrate your work because they don't know that you're doing it. But meanwhile, they are celebrating your work. I don't know. It's fascinating. It's kind of fascinating to me.
Tell us the story behind your story.
Yeah, so a few things inspired The Stand. First, when I was doing research on my documentary, I was in Philly and learned that Southeast Asian refugees in the 80s and 90s started to sell food on the streets and then in the park, and they kept getting raided. But then they kept coming back and still selling food to survive. And so now in Philly, there's a thriving Southeast Asian market that's like really amazing, and please go visit. But in those families, those stands are run by families, and as some of you may know, immigrant Asian communities work intergenerationally. So you'll see, you know, like stands are run by families, and I was walking in LA too, seeing a young Asian girl helping her dad at a stand, and then seeing two Latino kids leaving a stand with their parents, and one of them had a Nerf gun. So there's like these visuals I kind of carried with myself, carried throughout the years. But I would say that the biggest inspiration was also having an older sister. I'm one of four, and she's like 8 years, 7 years older than me. And she stepped up. She had to step up, you know. And I think we all know girl, now part older woman, who took care of us when we were younger, either emotionally, financially, and holding it down for the family. So I really want to really center a story on like a Southeast Asian immigrant girl who does that for her family. And I think sometimes the labor and the emotional labor of young immigrant girls is invisibilized. And I just wanted to make sure to amplify that, but also to say that young girls of color are super vulnerable in like this world, and they're also super powerful. And I think it's just important to remember that.
Great, thank you. Some yours?
Yeah, so for anyone who didn't see the film, Long's Long Lost in Myanmar is about a young man who brings his dead father's ashes to like a seedy liquor store and books a room in the back to reanimate his dad, to have a last conversation with him. This came from a fantasy of my own that I think everybody who's lost anyone has had, is that you always wish you could spend some more time with the people you've lost. But I always feel like that's a battle you're going to lose, because I don't think that once you open that door, you're never going to be like, you will want it to last forever. And so I somehow found a combination of that mixed with a real, I stepped into a liquor store in Orange County, where I saw there's a drunk monk in the Buddhist monk in the film, and I saw like a very, very belligerently drunk monk in this liquor store, and a ton of people just like hanging out gambling. Like there was a table, there was 3 TVs playing the lottery, and they just like were hanging out all day, and I'd never seen that before. And I think somehow I started thinking about this, like essentially like refugees, Vietnamese essentially like commodifying other people's hopes and dreams, with like lottery, you're gambling, and like you're essentially making money off of selling hope to other people, from your own background. And so I thought about, what if you were, selling this conversation that's like probably going to disappoint you. And I feel like my process of my worldview and my creative process is to like see things and like ask myself questions and then never answer them. And I feel like it just like drives my interest to like keep moving along from script to execution, that like I never give myself an answer about these things that I'm interested in. And I think that kind of comes across in the film. I don't, I didn't even write the conversation that the boy's going to have with his dad, because I was like, I have no idea. Like, I can't write what any good version of what that's going to be. So I feel like, I don't know. I don't have, losing my dad was a really destabilizing thing, because I don't have any sort of spiritual sort of safety net. Like I don't have a spiritual belief. And I think, you know, this film is like a way to explore, in the absence of answers, for something traumatic like losing someone, like what are the stories we can tell ourselves in order to like structure our grief. And yeah, so that's kind of what like drove me through this film. And I don't know, I think this film's about a boy who loses his dad, and I keep making films about this with my own father. But in this film, the main conflict is between him and the lady that runs a store, and there's sort of a clear relation between them that's like this like mother son thing. And I think after finishing the film and me watching again, I was like, oh my god, I've like sort of written these things that I feel with my mom, and the ways in which like uh, the older generation of specifically for Vietnamese people, I think like my generation feels entitled for them to understand the things we're going through. And there's just this disconnect, of communication between like the two generations. Um, and so I think this film is a little bit of a way for me to like explore understanding, like, oh, this is what like the older generation go through, things that they don't tell you about, and that probably informs like the way that they talk to you and the way that they treat you, which I used to always be like, wow, they're so mean, like they're so mean to us. But trying to like pull the veil back and be like, wow, they're mean for like kind of a reason. They've had some like really like fucked up losses too, and they just maybe don't know how to communicate it.
Exploring questions without easy answers. You're new David Lynch, my friend, so it works for him.
Oh my god, I wish.
Bring it home.
Well, yeah, I try not to end on a super morose note. I mean, I think that people might watch Boy Fighter and it's sad, but I do think it's a hopeful film in the end. And I ultimately wanted to make a film that honored my brother, that was about my brother, specifically also just the men in my family. It's interesting how many people have watched Boy Fighter and have actually asked me if my brother died in a fight. I think that's really interesting. And what I can say is my brother did not die in a fight, but he died fighting for his life. And I think that we're living in a time where violence, survival, greed, it's all around us. It's you can't ignore it anymore. And I knew that I wanted Boy Fighter to feel universal in the sense of, for me, the fighting, the violence in Boy Fighter is, to me, represents human struggle and what parents, fathers, mothers, siblings, what they have to do just to keep going, to survive, and how that inevitably can touch the lives of those around you. Um, I think again, it's a sad story, but at the same time, my brother, and I said this at Tribeca, and it sounds sad, but my brother died very young, and my uncle, my mom's brother, died basically the same age, and I never got to know him. My grandfather died from the same way that his son and his grandson would die, and his father died the same. They all died the same way, fighting this same thing, and when you're left with that kind of cycle, it's very hard to find hope. It's very hard to find what's the point? Like, why would I want to continue when that's my reality? And when you love someone as much as I love my brother, as much as I love my grandfather and my uncle, who I never even had the joy of knowing personally, that makes it all worth it. And so while we're processing in Boy Fighter this violence, that I think we can feel all throughout the world right now, it's rooted in a deep, powerful love, and that makes every breath we take in this life worth it. And when I saw my brother's body, and that, it was exactly like for the final scene when he goes to see his son's body, it was almost verbatim to when I saw my brother's body. I was overwhelmed with joy that I had this man as my brother. And I didn't tell him a story, but I sang to him a song that represented something for us. And I think that calls to how we're all just so deeply connected, and through all the pain that we see today, tomorrow, and forever, that we need to hold on to the memories that root us to each other in joy. And that's ultimately what I hope people take from Boy Fighter, while they also are feeling. It's a very poetic film, kind of like what David was saying. It's not super concept, it's not super plot driven. It really is. I want people to be left feeling something, whether or not they understand it's between two different timelines. I want them to feel something deep, and something about appreciating life and the fragility of it, but the power of it as well.
Powerful and poignant stuff, much like your film. I'm going to go to audience questions in a couple of minutes, so be thinking of those if you have any at this stage. But first, Costanza, you worked on all these films. What do you think links them and links these filmmakers? And as you take the films to Tribeca and elsewhere, what are some of the more interesting reactions you've been getting from audiences?
I think we chose scripts that were incredibly universal, and I think that you just sort of experience them. They're all incredibly unique and delve into human emotion at the core. So I think human emotion is what links all of these films. Obviously, through the thread that was important to Indeed, which is jobs, and how that affects our day-to-day life. And I think um I mean, my favorite thing about this entire process is to sit and watch it with an audience and hear them laugh, cry, like you hear the responses, the silence, the gasps, the cries, and then you're like, okay, we did it, guys. Like we actually did it, because that's the goal, to connect us in this world. And living in a world where we don't watch things together, it's incredibly moving to be in a room with like 400 people and hear the reactions to the work. So that's been really special.
If you have a question at this stage, please raise your hand, and I'll take them in the order that I see them, and wait for the roving mic. And if the microphone could go first to the back row there, who's got the roving mic, please? Okay, just thank you. It's just for those watching at home, we need it on the microphone, so thanks for understanding that. Thank you. What's your name and what's your question?
My name is Michelle.
Michelle?
And it's been a joy to kind of meet some of you and throughout the week. And I'm just very curious for each of your projects, kind of the thing that you thought was going to be the most difficult and ended up not being, and vice versa, the thing that you thought would be easy but ended up being most difficult.
In any order? Anyone who wants to take that?
No, you gotta go first, dude. It's you're pressure boss. You're sick, guys. Kidding? He looked at me.
I mean, fine. I think we had a fair number of extras in the restaurant. This is very like technical, so I think just like extra work is always intimidating. Like, how do you keep a room full of people engaged and feel alive? And we had a wonderful first assistant director who's not here, but she's a rock star, Becca Weston, and she absolutely killed it. And just she would go up to every single group in the restaurant and give them a backstory and told them why they were there and what they were celebrating. And I mean, she knew, like, I can't describe to you the orchestration of like when someone should cross camera or when someone she just had like that on lock because she had so much experience and just knowledge, and that is such an invisible skill, and she made that with her whole AD team work like magic. Some of the more difficult things is just like getting the right emotions, whether it's between the two actors on the street. I mean, they were both incredible professionals, but giving them a safe environment to work and making sure you hit those tones is, I mean, it's not me, to be honest. It's really just trying to build the best environment for them to work in, and they're the ones that ultimately are able to find that the magic. So I think, yeah, just having really good collaborators that made the entire process very easy.
Is it me?
Julian? No. Julian. Yes.
Anyone?
The hardest thing, I will say the hardest thing for this one, locations. I did not realize how hard it would be to find like the hallway that we envisioned for the back of this liquor store, because obviously liquor stores don't have, we had to shoot two locations and combine them. And I searched like high and low, like South Bay, OC, LA, the Valley, everywhere. And it's like, I was like, oh my God, I'm just facing rejection at like every liquor store I walk into and ask if I can film. Or sorry, that well, I did that too. But then the hallway was like, okay, maybe we shoot in like a massage spa. But you know, that's really tricky because like massage spas either don't have long hallways, or their rooms, because we need to shoot the room with the dad coming back to life, was like they're also very small. And also, you know, we started to do it and we're like, oh, like you walk into like a massage spa and you ask like, can we film in here? And they're like, they get really freaked out, understandably. So we quickly were like, okay, that's not the right path. And then so the lowest point I had on this was like a week before the shoot, and producers were like, well, can we just cut the hallways? I was like, I don't know how to do that, like maybe, but you know. And I wanted to like vomit and like throw up, and I was like, I'm only gonna make 2/3 of a film next week. Like, there's no way this is gonna suck. And like the next day, we found the one at a location in Burbank. So like that, but yeah, that was my real low point. I went to like Weed Spa that night and like fell asleep overnight, and like woke up and my stomach was still hurting, and I was just like, this sucks. And then the thing I thought maybe would be harder, and ended up being a lot easier than I thought, was you know, working with our cast, Jack, who's here. Like, you know, as is probably evident from this story, like I have editor brain, so once I've like locked into something, I have a very hard time sometimes letting it go. Um, and so, you know, we essentially like rewrote a lot of the dialogue all the way up till like the night before, and then it was like we showed up on set, and like Jackie and Hongdao were just like essentially riffing everything, and I feel like, and it was great, it was amazing. I was like, this is better than anything I wrote. So it was really like a, you know, it just makes it simple. Like when the actors are amazing, it's like my job just becomes so much easier. It's like we just watched them. We're like, that was fantastic. Like we'll just try again. Like we'll do again, adjust a couple things. But I feel like they like elevated the script, and then we get to post, and I'm like, well, there's just like a wealth of options. So that was really beautiful. And I think for me, a lesson in like kind of like letting go a little bit.
Yeah, I would love to piggyback off that. So so Boy Fighter was my fifth film, and it was definitely the hardest film I've ever made. And it's funny because my husband, who's here, he's an amazing producer. One of the films I made, we built, and our amazing production designer of that film, built a cabin in the woods, made all the costumes from scratch, shot in Mexico, like in the middle of nowhere. You think that would be the hardest film I ever had to make. But no, Boy Fighter was definitely the hardest film I ever had to make. I mean, first of all, obviously the emotion when you set out to make something so personal and connected to something that's really deeply rooted in grief, it's hard. You never feel like you're going to make the film that is deserving of your loved one. So that was the first hard thing. And also, I'm big on where I shoot. I really wanted to shoot in Louisiana. I'm not from there, but Boy Fighter is all about resilience and invincibility, and I wanted to shoot in a landscape that knew that this is a place that that knows hurricanes, these homes that have lived through hurricanes and tornadoes, and yet that's their home, they're not going anywhere. So I knew I wanted to shoot there, and we ended up unfortunately losing our main location like the night before shooting. And I remember like probably one of my most I don't know what you would call it. Like, I feel like one of my, I don't want to say weakest moment as a director, but just like my lowest moment as a director where because everyone was like looking to me to be like, well, where should we shoot? Like, what should we do? Like, what's the answer here? And I was just like, I don't know. I closed in. I felt so numb, like partially because it's a film I wanted to make for my brother. And that really like, it seized me up. But why that turns into it being the easiest thing is when and it's the best advice I can give anybody, like work with people who are just good people and love your vision and your story and are a collective part of that, whether it's your crew, your executives, your cohort, have people that you can lean on, because what ended up being the hardest thing I've ever faced as a director ended up being so easy because I could lean on the people who I knew could push me forward. And we had to change a lot, but the film turned out even better because we had such a phenomenal group of people behind it, including my actor Chase, who's here. He plays the son, and I remember crying on my first day. Crying, I mean, I was like, I fell to my knees. It was so dramatic. And Chase came up to me, this 11-year-old boy, the maturity to come up to his director, put his hand on my shoulder and say that he's here for me. And I remember just being like, I have to be strong for him because he's being strong for me. And so, and Constanza, same thing. She called me and she's like, you are the only person that can make this film. And I was like, okay, people believe in me. They're all here. And it ended up being like a very powerful learning lesson for me and for anybody else out there. Just you trust, like it's a process. When you meet your HODs, your cast, you're not just hiring the talent, you're hiring people that you need to want to work with that will hold you through those hard times, because making film is hard. No matter what, it's always going to be hard. So yeah.
It's so rare to hear a director say, I don't know, in response to an on-set question. So, but so inspiring as well that when you have a great team around you, they can really, show that teamwork makes the dream work. Anyone else want to answer that question about hardest and easiest?
Sure. Oh, you want to go?
Whatever, go ahead.
I would say I was kind of anticipating, or I was the most nervous about working with children because I had not worked with kids before, and there's quite a gaggle of children in Honey Bear. And of course, as these things work out, like the day we're shooting with the kids is the day that I'm told like BTS is coming, and we're having set visits, and Indeed's going to be there, and great, great, and it Doing great.
Oh, yes, behind the scenes. I thought you meant the Korean boy band were coming, but you mean?
Oh no, I mean behind the scenes.
Oh, right, sorry. When I hear BTS, you know.
Yeah, with BTS was I wouldn't we would have recorded
The kids
that
would like that,
video
yes.
and I would not be here right now. I would be a big time music video director. No, it actually ended up being like a great day. It was kind of controlled chaos in a little bit of a way, but fantastic day and kind of honestly a great day I think for people to be there and visit and take photographs of. And when I was looking back at the behind the scenes photos, it's everybody was having so much fun, and it's really important to me. The experience, it's important to me. It's important to my producers. The experience that people have on set, because I've been on a lot of sets where I didn't have control over the experience, and it was a very hard experience. And so, looking at the photographs and the kids are there, and everyone is just so happy, like genuinely happy. And we got emails from the parents afterwards, like the kids had the best time. They were taking photos, kind of felt like summer camp, and we got good stuff too. It wasn't just like goofing around. We actually got some good stuff. And then the thing that ended up being the hardest, and this is a theme, locations. Like locations. I wrote a basketball movie during basketball season, and it became like very impossible to find a space that wasn't being used. And shout out to one of my producers, Mary, who now this is like a badge of honor for her that she's like figured this out. Even got to a point where she was like, "What? You remember maybe football story?" And I was like, maybe basketball. And figured it out days before we shot, though, like days before we shot, which is a theme. Like this kind of it comes down to The Wire, and similar to like what Julia said, one of the things is kind of just trusting in your people and trusting that you are gonna figure it out, even when it feels like, oh, man, we're shooting in literally days. I can't quite see the end of the tunnel here, but the crew around me, like they're holding it down and they're figuring it out. But shout out to Mary for that one. I tortured her a bit, but she did the thing.
I mean, very similar. Location is very hard as well. Thought it'd be easy to find a street. Nope. A street that had to be safe, especially for the kids if we're shooting at night, and then to find a place with a bar. So also it was like a week before we film, or 10 days. Stephanie, our producers come in, always helping out. She was like, why don't we just shoot outside our studio, like, because we're housing cast and crew, and then we turned our studio into the bar, and then we just took over our parking lot, and that was incredible because it took us like a month to try to find it. We got close every time, and then something would go, awry. So yes, locations. And what I thought would be the hardest ended up being easiest was the cast. So originally, I worked with Mark Troder, and he's an amazing casting director. I opened up to Southeast Asian actors in general, and then I was like, okay, so we find the girl first, and then we find the family. And Jovi was like one of the first girls I watched, and I was like, I think it's her. And then I was like, okay, so now we gotta find Filipino folks, and that was really easy. Then Kai was also one of the first boys I watched tape, and then he was Filipino. I was like, this is great. And we found Nicole, and then so together that was actually the easiest part. I was very lucky to find all three of them, and they had amazing chemistry.
Anyone else?
I think it's me. There was a group text with all of us on it, and I was the last to shoot, and I was just like, everyone was freaking out about their locations. I was like, ah!
We were freaking out.
There was like all kinds of meltdowns and freakouts in that group text. Insider information. What was hard? I think the hard thing that I thought was going to be easy was casting. Um, for Tom, the ugly character, I had I had an actor friend who I'd kind of been thinking about when I wrote it, and then as we got closer to shooting, I was like, I just don't think it's him. I don't know. He's too young and too handsome. And it turned out he was on a press tour for a pretty big movie at the time, so I couldn't use him anyways. Um, so I reached out through some friends to another friend who's an actor. They're on the same show together, and I said, they were like, oh, he said he's down. Just send him an email. It's like, oh, cool, this is easy. And so I sent him an email, and then his manager got back to me, and it was just like making my life super difficult. I was just like, oh my God. Um, and it was like I thought I was going to be dealing directly with the actor. Turns out I'm dealing with their reps. It was a super big headache. You know, reps are super important, but they can also complicate our lives in ways that you know what I mean. We need them, but we hate them sometimes. Um, so I was like, you know, screw this. I don't want to work with you anymore. No, just kidding. He wasn't available either. So then, you know, we're getting closer to shooting. I didn't have either of my actors. I had a bunch of auditions that I was just kind of like lukewarm on. For the Frank character, the guy with the hand coming out of his chest, I had a bunch of people who were pretty good, but none of them were Icelandic, and it was like really important to me that they were Icelandic. So like right before we shot, uh, I was hitting up Casa. I was like, we don't have any Icelandic people. She's like, I have Icelandic friends. Like, you do? Okay. And so she like put a shout out to the Icelandic community. I didn't even know they existed. And I was like, cool. And all of a sudden we had all these Icelandics hitting us up. So I had like just like back to back to back reads with all these amazing Icelandic actors, and my guy here uh did his audition, and then I looked him up, and he was like a pop star. And I was just watching all these crazy music videos. I was like, this is amazing. It's like I've never seen anything like this. I have to work with this guy. So we ended up casting like literally right before we shot. Also Benarin, who played Tom, had a film at South by Southwest that some friends had met just like at a party, and they were like, oh, you should talk to my friend, he's trying to cast a native actor right now. And so it just like magically, like the serendipitously came together at the last minute, and we got our cast, and we like dove into rehearsals, and it worked out somehow. I still don't quite understand how, but the universe sometimes has like a plan. And then the thing that thought was going to be hard but was easy, I think, was the hand. Like I remember Cons again. I'm always, hitting her up when I'm in panic mode. Um, we had this great what do they call the guys that make the stuff? The fabricator, yeah. But he's like super busy, and he's doing all this big stuff, and he was like, yeah, I'll make it for you. But it was like, 2 days out, I haven't seen the hand. It's like a day and a half out, where's the hand? And then finally, like the day before, everyone's hitting me up, and they're like, yo, where is the hand? It's like, it's coming. And so I'm like calling this guy, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And I was like, dude, I need to see this hand right now, because he's sending me like little snapshots of like a mold of clay. Um, so I drove out and I saw the hand the day before. I was like, oh, this is great. This is amazing. It's the best hand I've ever seen. And then I was like, so you're going to be on set tomorrow when we do the hand, and you can do all the puppeteering? He's like, oh, no, I have another job. Like, I'm just going to give you some fishing line. You guys figure it out. I was like, okay. So I told my production designer, I was like, we have to be puppeteers. And I was like, I'm not a fucking puppeteer. The hell are you talking about, man? We're not. What do you mean? It's going to be shadows. We don't know how to do this. I was like, well, we have no choice, man. We're about to do this. And so, literally, like, as they're fixing the hand to his chest, we're like playing with the wire and trying to figure out how to do it. But it worked somehow. Like at the 11th hour, whatever they say, 23rd hour, whatever the saying is. We were there on set, and we were playing with the fishing lines, and we had the blue lights, and we were just kind of laying on our backs, and we had ladders and pulling the strings, and it worked. And we're like, okay, well, kind of. I don't even know if it's an accident, but it came together, and we didn't need the guy to be our puppeteer after all. So the moral of the story is do your own puppets.
You've all made films about the future of work. I want to close by talking about the future of filmmaking, and I'll end with you on this, Costanza. Let's go along the line. So much talk about sort of AI and how filmmaking is going to change in the coming years. You're all visionaries, so put ourselves 10 years from now. What do you each think filmmaking will look like, and how will it be different from what you experienced on this film?
Yes. You sat there with this chair. I don't know if I'm the most qualified person to give that answer, but I'll say, I mean, AI is here, it's inevitable. I think there are a lot of technologies that have emerged throughout the course of human history that feel like the end of times, but end up becoming a part of our fabric. I think I will say, my producer Philip actually brought this up the other day. He said, I think no matter how powerful of a tool AI becomes, it still needs someone to guide it and to direct it. So I think if you have a place in a creative vision, it becomes another tool that falls under the spectrum of sound or visual effects or anything else. I don't quite have the foresight to imagine what the world is going to be like in 10 years. I can barely make it past 10 days. So I'm going to give it to David now.
Um, dang, 10 years? Jesus. Well, it's funny. My friend, the author Tommy Orange, who I made this film with, called me in the middle of the screening while I was in the restroom and was all freaked out about AI. He was like, dude, we have to sell some shows right now because in a couple of years, the window's closed and AI is going to take all our jobs and I don't know what we're going to do and I got to feed my family. I was like, oh man, that's a lot of pressure, bro. But I don't know. I think, like Mike said, a couple stories. My friend's mom was telling me one day at a party that, oh, sorry, that there's a thing called the computer that everyone thought was going to take everyone's jobs and make everyone obsolete, and it kind of just enhanced what we do. So hopefully AI is like that. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be less jobs. Maybe we're all just like organic filmmakers, and there's like two different classes of filmmakers. I don't know.
Let's hear your doomsday or positive vision.
Uh, you know what? I can't predict what the way that the filmmaking world is going to be because nobody could predict where we are now. I think the only thing that I hope will happen, I hope that similar to how with digital technology, filmmaking became accessible to so many more people, that maybe with AI, I don't know, something like that will happen as well, that it just becomes a bit more accessible to make content. And then outside of that, like 10 years from now, I don't know, I want to be watching a TV show that Julia made. I want to be able to go to the movies and see something that all of these guys have made. You're certainly going to see something I've made. So we're putting that out there in the universe and we're manifesting that. But other than that, that's the only thing I can guarantee. You will see something from us. Everything else, man, I don't know.
Honey Bear 7, The Revenge. Come on.
Ah, that's dope. I'm gonna pitch that.
I agree with that. And also, like, we see videos on Instagram and we're like, ugh, AI, and we roll our eyes. I do think it's not going to go anywhere, but I do think we're still going to be hungry and thirsty for human stories, and we're the only ones who can make it, and we're going to like really we still want real emotions, people who have lived experiences. So I think we're still going to protect that in 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty optimistic about it, honestly. Like, it's kind of like we can all stream every fucking song ever made on our phones, but like people still like going to concerts. So I feel like it might just, to me, it's just probably just about it may grow more intimate in terms of like how we show films, how we share with community. Um, I mean, it's like everyone talks about the film industry in LA is dead, and look at this. It's like every screening's packed house. There's like 400 plus films. Like, I don't know. I think we're gonna still keep doing it.
Yeah. People watch movies and watch shows because of who makes them, because of who's in them. I'll be honest, I'm not super well versed in it, but I will say I'm very anti AI. I think it's very dangerous. I think that as filmmakers, we have an obligation to, like, I know it's coming, but I do think we have a duty and obligation to say, not in my film. I think that if you resonated with Boy Fighter, it's because it came from, like, that's mine. That's my story. That's my brother's story. And every single person who came onto my set brought their voice, and there's like AI can never replace that. I think that it's dangerous, and I think that we should all together collectively say that we will not be using AI in the next 10 years.
Costanza, a final word to you. You've spent much of the last 5 years of your life shaping the future of work through films. What's the future of filmmaking in your view?
I don't know. I mean, we definitely cannot ignore what is going on, and we have to, as optimistic as I want to be, to kind of go back to the times where we were consuming films in a cinema together. I think that that is not going in the direction that I would hope. Don't know what next 10 years are, but what I have seen in the past even 6 months is that AI is not going away. It's just not. It's moving rapidly. Companies are, I think what's stopping it is the fact that they haven't cracked legally how to go about it, and I think that that's the only kind of lock holding back. I have heard that a lot of movies that we have seen recently have been made with AI and people don't know about. Um, and so I think we need to. I'm really like I agree with Julia. I'm like I wish we weren't sitting here having this conversation right now, but we cannot ignore the reality of what is out there. I do hope that some companies take it on to become like responsible about how the ethics of the use of AI get implemented into work, and I have hope that I know that no AI can replace the stories that you watch today, and that AI and cannot come up with these deep human films. So can we ignore it? No. Should we? Yes, you know. But I mean, I think people need to not fear it because it's not going away. It's just not. And so learning ways to to learn to navigate this sort of rapidly growing evil that has that has come up to disrupt a deeply human way of telling stories. I don't know how I would utilize that. I don't know. I don't want to, but I do see it around me, and the conversation around it is happening, and big companies are pushing how to to embrace it, to cut costs, to
Well, take it from me, Sandra Ebonetti, the future of filmmaking is every one of you out there, every one of you at home, these people on stage. They're going to sort of mingle with you next door at the after party. But for now, give it up for the Rising Voices.